Okay, yeah, we can start the analysis of your group session. What? The gradual training, but what for? I hope you had a fruitful discussion, had some interesting things to say. I will give the long answer to this question in a moment, so can I ask you to keep your answers short and to the point? Don't need to say everything that you've discussed, just bring out some highlights. Yeah, you want to go first?
Is the microphone working? Tap it.
Think?
Okay, now.
Yeah. So there's a few people who are new as well as some existing practitioners. People said that it feels good and applies to their life. Another person said they're in their midlife, and to cope with that, these Buddhist workshops have been a very good source, and the gradual training is something that they can apply. Another person said that it was gentle, although they still have hindrances. They like the gentleness of the gradual path. Another person said a way of coping with life, death and suffering. Another person said another lofty goal, no lofty goals, make me a better person and I get bliss from it. So that's the gradual path they like. Give me hope, slow, but after coming to these workshops, something is happening. Somebody said life inspiration to reach enlightenment. What a person also liked was that there was a framework of gradual training, not just for meditation, but even out of meditation, the practice towards reaching, I guess, Nibbana. Another person found it's just relaxation. They feel peaceful and contented. Somebody came to the temple as a retreat to learn and practice with the monks. So that's their gradual way of introducing themselves to the Dhamma. Another person found it very anchoring, grounding, and develops wisdom. That's why. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, a lot of good points. I like it as well, like the what we went through in the previous workshop is that it's gradual, like you slowly going into the ocean, that there's no deep. All of a sudden you sink in, but it's gradual, and then also that you have to involve the whole life into this path. It's not just meditation.
All right, the other group.
So we have a lot of comments on gradual conditioning, living in line with the Dhamma. Other people have made comments about what it is for, is in line with, taking advantage of the opportunities that arise. Some people have commented on practicing mindfulness. There's a couple comments here about hindrances as well. Of particular note, we had people discussing the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, which, yeah. One here is to overcome suffering by gradually reconditioning the mind, to stay on track as a disciple of the Lord Buddha and feel safe. One comment here, to see clearly, avoiding the cloudiness of the mind by hindrances. To share sympathetic joy.
Nice.
One here says that it's a map signposting to find the ultimate or the final destination for Nibbana. And we have one here saying it's helpful for their practice rather than reading just books.
Very, very good. Thank you very much for those answers. Excellent. So we heard a lot of different answers actually. Some people just come to getting a little bit of inspiration, other to let go of some of the hindrances, some for some peace, all different places in the path, and we are here for different reasons, similar reasons, but also, in a sense, different reasons. And that's why I asked you this question, because then you can tell for yourself, where am I at, and why do I actually come to these workshops? And it makes it a bit more, hopefully a bit more alive. Now, in some of the suttas, the Buddha said, it's about the gradual training, and he says something to the extent of, some people, they practice their virtue, and then they have good virtue, and then they're content with that, and then they kind of stop there. And there's a praise in virtue, which is good, but the Buddha encourages you, go further. And they practice sense restraint, they're content with that, they stop there. The Buddha encourages, go further. They even attain deep meditation, they're content there. The Buddha says, no, don't be content there. And then they get right view even, stream winning. You might have heard that term before, some of you. And the Buddha even says, don't be content with right view. Go all the way to the end of the path. All the way, the end of the gradual training, enlightenment, and the end of suffering eventually. So that's what I want to talk about today, because this is the last session of the gradual training, and we should end at the end, right? That sounds like a good idea to me. Well, that's always been so inspiring to me, because ideas like, okay, faith is beautiful, but in many religions they have faith, you know. In some of the religions, that's almost the be-all and end-all of their practice. You have faith in Jesus and God, and then you'll be saved. Yeah? In Buddhism, we have faith in different things, but it should not end with faith. Yeah? Other religions also, virtue is important, and some religions sense restraint, and certain religions meditation. Then there's insight, you know. This path actually leads to completely changing your view about life and about happiness and suffering. And that insight is so different from other religions. The Buddha said that himself as well, and I'll get to that later. And that is what has always been so inspiring to me. I'm very happy to get the opportunity to talk about some of these deeper ideas here today, because that's always, that gets me alive, you know. Yeah. Okay, hindrances, it's very interesting, but you know, this deeper Dhamma, that is, for me, that is always what is underneath it all, you know. You don't just meditate to have a peaceful mind, not for me anyway. If that's your aim, that's fine, but I'm encouraging you today to have a look at these deeper ideas by the Buddha as well. And if these ideas are new to you, they will be very strange, and maybe you don't understand everything I say, so I can only highlight a few things. This deserves a whole workshop of its own. I see you have some nice coffee there to keep you awake.
Well, I cannot attain jhana right while we're teaching, so...
Well, this morning you asked me about, I don't know about your hindrances, but just half an hour ago, I really was very in tune with the hindrance of sleepiness and sloth and torpor. You know, woke up early, drove here, then did the workshop, then eating, and then it's hot as well. And I was like, oh.
Excuses.
Well, coffee is the wrong way to do, not have any excuses.
It's interesting, Buddha says about, one of those things where like monks, you eat too much and then you have this sleepiness after lunch. Always remember for myself, after lunch I was like, oh, here we go again.
Oh yeah, maybe I ate too much. But actually I just sat down in your room, thank you, just to meditate for half an hour. And instead of trying to fight with the sleepiness, I was just like, oh, this is the way it is. I don't do anything. I'm just sitting here, calm, collected, and mindfulness just comes. So hopefully you can also be a bit more awake. But also, to keep you a bit awake, I brought something interesting this morning. I was walking in the monastery waiting for... It's especially for you, actually.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's a present.
I'm excited. I woke up now. I want to know what you...
I'm waiting for the driver, and we have this section in the monastery where kids can get some toys to play with.
Yeah.
And last week, Venerable Kimila encouraged me to use the word garbologist inside a Dhamma talk.
Oh yeah.
Which means a trash collector, or a koskakuski, right?
Roskakuski.
Roskakuski in Finnish. So I saw this, I thought I have to bring it.
What?
Garbage
Really? We had
truck.
that?
We had that.
Garbologist tool.
And look, even...
Wow.
I'm gonna teach you what Buddhism has to do with garbology, or with trash collecting, and how you can throw out all the trash.
So are the hindrances like garbage?
The hindrances are garbage, but much more is garbage as well. I'll get to that later. But I have to wake you up a little bit. It even has a reversing sound as well, I think. Right?
Impressive.
So I'll teach you in a moment what that has to do with Buddhism. I didn't prepare for that, slides for that, so we'll see how that goes, but here are some slides. They're working? They're working.
Yep.
Okay. So we went through the gradual training, how it starts with the Buddha, and then faith, and then so forth, blah, 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 giving up the hindrances. Venerable Mudito talked about this morning, and now I'm going to teach you about the 4 jhanas and the 3 higher knowledges. Was the idea of when they put together this workshop. But I actually had a look at the gradual training in the Samaññaphala Sutta, which is one of the suttas which teaches the gradual training. There's many different suttas, and they all teach it a little bit differently. Well, not all of them, but many of them teach it a little bit different. And the whole section from hearing the Dhamma until giving up the hindrances and attaining the jhanas is very similar. But some of the suttas, including this one, don't end with 3 knowledges, but 8 knowledges. 8. And here's these 8, and I will not go through them all, but starts with certain insight into the body and mind. Then there is like astral projection, which means like you can... out-of-body experiences, right? Some supernormal powers I won't go into, divine hearing and mind reading. It's like all these powers come from meditation, really. And then you got the threefold knowledge, which happens in most of the suttas on the gradual training, of past life recollection, divine eye, which is like insight into karma, and then the ending of the defilements, or the ending of the asavas. That's my translation of asavas, which I stole from Venerable Sujato, and I want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about all these 8, because we noticed this during many of the workshops already, we run out of time. So I will only talk about insight into body and mind, and the ending of the defilements, and everything in between, also that leave aside. But it's not that these things are completely useless or completely unimportant. These deep meditations of the jhanas, which we've mentioned quite a few times already, they are so powerful that when you come out, many of these things, they just happen to you, you know. It's not like you need a course in mind reading or something, or a course in astral projection from some guru. No, you come out of your meditation and suddenly you float out of your body or something like that. It just happens. Many people have these experiences, and often it just happens once or twice in their life. But the reason I'm saying this is the Buddha also taught that whatever he teaches is because it's beneficial and it has use. It's a famous simile of the handful of leaves, you know. Like there's all these leaves out there in the park and in the trees of Lin's garden that I can see from here. And there's all these leaves, all these things the Buddha could have taught, but he only has a little handful of leaves that he taught. And these things, he said, I only teach this because it's helpful and it's beneficial. And often these special powers, let's call them, are just glossed over as unimportant or irrelevant. But if that was the case, the Buddha would not have taught them, right? So it's mainly, you don't need all of them, but when they do happen, they can be super beneficial. They teach you something. Yeah. But I don't want to go too much into all of that for sake of time. As I said, this deserves a whole workshop on its own.
That would be an interesting workshop. We have the astral projection workshop.
Yeah. No, this is interesting actually. So I have to be careful what I say, but at one point I was interested in astral projection, let me put it that way. And we had this book in the monastery, and it was like a real thick book about it, about how to do it and what happens and what it's like. And I was reading it, and Ajahn, one of the Ajahns said to me, not Ajahn Brahm, but one of the Ajahns said, we don't do that stuff in the monastery. It's a bad book or something to that extent. So it did not get into the library. But it was a really good book, actually. It was really, really cool. And it was really on point on many of the things as well.
We should, maybe have a astral projection, supernormal powers and divine hearing workshop. That deserves. I bet you we would get a lot of audience as well.
Yeah, I was going to say there would be more people here. But the best thing is the ending of the defilements, actually. And so for those of you who are here, that is the best of all. But before I get there, let me start with the first one. Insight into body and mind. I gave it this is my name of this because it doesn't have a particular name in the suttas. It only happens in 3, 4, 5 maybe suttas. But it's a very interesting one. And it's actually called Vipassana Jnana in the suttas. It's I said it doesn't have a name, but this is a name that's given in the section titles of the suttas. So the Buddha doesn't himself use that term, but then later people gave it this name. So inside knowledge. If you want to look for inside knowledge in the suttas, this is one of them. Are you interested in me talking about this, or are you looking forward to the astral projection workshop instead? This is much more cool, let me tell you. Okay, then I'll talk about that with your help, Venerable. Before I get into that particular insight, I have to underline what we have said before, and that is the importance of deep meditation for all these special knowledges, but including even insight into body and mind. Yeah, again and again and again and again and again and again in the suttas, this Buddha says, abandon the hindrances, attain these jhanas, and then you get all these insights. Yeah, it's important to know, especially for your practice, to decide, do you have real insight or not? Often I get people asking, I had this insight, and then I'm like, I'm excited, tell me. And it's like really not super deep insight when they tell me. It's like, I just felt like I had this image in my mind of things, whatever. And I was like, it doesn't sound like real insight. So real insight comes from the jhanas. And hopefully I get the opportunity to touch upon what jhanas actually are like during this talk as well. But we gave a whole workshop on that 2 years or 3 years ago, and which was even more sessions than this one. So if you're interested and you haven't seen it yet, have a look on the YouTube. And we talked in much detail there. So to underline this, the importance of samadhi or jhana for insight. This is the Buddha speaking, develop unification of mind. That's my translation for samadhi, which was sort of brought up this morning already. And it's a very literal translation. Literal is not necessarily better always, but in this case I think it has things going for it, because samadhi literally means to come together. And it's, for example, in non-technical contexts, you got a tortoise or a turtle, and when it draws all its limbs and its head under its shell, then the word used for that is samadhi. It doesn't mean that the tortoise is sitting in jhana inside his shell, right? But it means he can bring all his limbs to one place. It unifies in one place safely inside. And that's very similar for jhanas as well. The mind comes to one place. It lets go of the outside world. You can't hear any sounds anymore. You can't feel your body anymore. I know some people have different opinions on this. I don't want to go into that here in this today. But that is my view of jhanas, which we defended during those workshops as well. But it has to come from experience, then you really know. It comes to one place in space, you could say, with the mind only. All your experience is the mind itself. And it's also one place in time. You're not thinking about the past or future. You can't even think about things at all. The mind, there's a slight movement there, but it is onto the object instead of back and forth. So it's all unified in one place. And this is how the Buddha defines it as well, or some other people in the suttas. Maybe it was not the Buddha himself, but like samadhi is oneness of mind, unity of mind. Chittasa ekagata, chitta ekodibhava. Eko means one, coming to one place. Then the Buddha says, if your mind gets unified, you will understand things in line with reality. It's no longer your delusions. Because then when you have abandon these hindrances, then you can get to see things as they really are. Another quote to this extent is, without right unification of mind, without samadhi, if you lack right unification of mind, you lack a necessary condition for knowing and seeing things in line with reality. Yata bhuta jnana dasa. And this usually refers to the first, real deep insight. It doesn't refer to enlightenment, but it refers to what we call stream entry, when you first see the nature of life, the nature of the mind and body completely. And when you understand what the cessation of suffering is, and how suffering arises, and how it was desire and craving that kept suffering going. When you understand all these things, that's knowing and seeing things in line with reality.
So, I don't want to, I'm not sure because I haven't seen your slides, but so you are saying that samadhi is the same as jhana?
Yeah, most of the time. There's a few places where samadhi is used more broadly, but here it also speaks about right samadhi, right? Sama samadhi. Then it's definitely talking about jhanas. Mm-hmm. Sometimes maybe the word samadhi means something slightly different from jhanas in certain contexts, but here it has to refer to jhanas, right?
Yep.
But also in the first quote where it doesn't say right samadhi, just develop samadhi, to me it still points to the jhanas, because when it does not point to jhanas but something more superficial, then it's usually clear from the context, and when the Buddha just uses the word samadhi, he means it in this more deeper sense of the jhanas, in my view. Yeah. If he doesn't clarify it.
Yeah, right. So he could point into sort of bit more superficial, like calmness of the mind. You could then translate it as a calmness of the mind, and then in this kind of context, you could translate it as jhanas.
Yeah, translation is another matter, of course.
Yeah.
But
an interesting thing is, I don't want to harp too much, but then some places where he says practice jhanas as well, very common. Jhanati. Practice jhanas. So it's again, there's different places he uses different words, but they're all pointing into that kind of. Basically, it's jhanas. Practice jhanas.
Jayati, it literally means something. Can also be something more broader, just like meditate. But in the Buddha's context, proper meditation is the jhanas.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's kind of what it implies.
That's also, like sometimes we also, when we talk about, as in our circles, with us like, oh, meditate. But then perhaps the Buddha was pointing sometimes to different places.
Yeah. So when he says jayati, it also means meditate in the sense of developing this jhana unification in mind, and not like contemplating things. Yeah. But like the insight is something which is always after the jhanas, the real deep insights, I mean. Yeah.
But quite often when we talk about meditate, we are basically talking about, normally when people, they're trying to sort of work with the hindrances, trying to let the hindrances go, and they don't go much deeper than that. So these are like really, really deep stage what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's why they lead to all these special things quite naturally. Okay, so that's the importance of samadhi for any kind of insight, but here stream winning specifically. This insight into body and mind, which I mentioned earlier, is actually not stream entry yet, but it's very interesting, and because it doesn't get talked about much, I don't think I've ever heard any sutta class or anything talk about it. I just wanted to highlight it, just to have something new, also for the people who might be already familiar with some of these other things. Insight into body and mind. This is in the Samaññaphala Sutta and some other suttas on the gradual training. And the Buddha says this: when your mind has been unified, or if we use Ajahn Brahm's translation, when your mind has been stilled, it's fine with me as well. I just use stillness for some other words already in my translations. When your mind has been unified in this way, and it refers back to the jhanas, which he discussed earlier, cleansed and purified, freed from blemishes and impurities, free from the hindrances basically, it becomes wieldy and workable, still and undisturbable. Your mind is free from the hindrances. You come out of jhana again, then your mind is still free from the hindrances. And that's when it becomes workable then, because nothing stands in your way of seeing things as they really are. Yeah? So one day you might attain these jhanas, right? I will not lie, they are quite rare. But they do happen, lay people attain them as well. But it's just like the trash collector, right? The trash collector comes once a week, they don't come every day. Yeah? So when it is time to put your trash on the side of the road, make sure you do. And it's the same with jhanas. When they come, don't just enjoy, I'm so peaceful now, I'm going to tell Ajahn Brahm about jhana. No. Use it to throw out your trash, your suffering. Use it to generate some real deep insight into the nature of life. And this is the first of these insights that the Buddha talks about. Then you direct it to a certain knowledge and insight, reflecting, this is my body, which is made of form, that's rupa, made of the four elements. This is just the way the people looked on physical matter in that time. It's of an impermanent nature, of the nature to deteriorate and degenerate, to decay and fall apart. That's not a real deep insight, yeah? You don't need jhanas to have that knowledge that the body is impermanent. But then the Buddha says, this is my mind, or my consciousness literally, which is bound and tied to it. And he continues saying, imagine a beryl gem. Beryl is like a color that has all good qualities, being naturally beautiful, eight-faceted, well-worked, transparent, clear, unclouded. Yeah, it refers to the pure mind, basically. And it is strung with a blue, yellow, red, white, or brown thread. Someone with good insight would take it in their hand and examine it, thinking, this beryl gem has all good qualities, and so forth. And it is strung with a blue, yellow, red, white, or brown thread. Likewise, when your mind has been unified in this way, the jhanas, then afterwards you direct it to knowledge and insight, reflecting, this is my body and this is my mind, which is bound and tied to it. So I made here a little drawing to illustrate what that simile is about. So you got your mind, which is like a beryl gem, something like bright, because it just comes out of jhana, right? So it's really clear, really lucid. And then it's sort of tied to this body in a way. And this is, I bring this up because when we were driving back from the workshop last week, we actually had a real good conversation in the car with some of the monks. And one of them asked, is it possible that, I can't remember exactly how they asked it, but somebody attains jhanas and then afterwards they're real skeptical about rebirth. Could they still get insight if they're really skeptical about rebirth? And then my answer was, if you attain jhanas, you'll lose much of your skepticism about rebirth. And the reason is you've seen something which you've never seen before. Usually we live in this world of the five senses, and even if we dream, it's like we dream about the five senses. Yeah, we dream sights and smells and whatever, and sounds. And when you sit down and close your eyes, you imagine things of the five senses. But when you have these deep experiences of meditation, your mind goes inside of itself. It really draws inward. And some of you have some experiences of this on some level, I'm sure, that you can see, oh yeah, my mind is looking at itself now. And then when you go into jhana, you see something there, which is like, oh, now I know why the Buddha was talking about six senses all the time. I really see the mind directly. It's no longer the mind looking outward towards things, towards the world, towards thoughts even. It's like the mind turning in, looking inside. Yeah. And that is how you can see, this is my mind, which is like, yeah, in this life, it's bound to this body in a way. You come out of deep meditation and your body is there again. You're like, oh, but this mind is something different in a sense from the body. It's not like mind-body dualism per se, because it's still tied to the body in a sense, but it is something more of a different nature. And you can very easily see, in my view, and that this is what I think the Buddha is talking about here, is how the mind can exist without the body in a sense. That if you die, that it would continue. Would you agree, Venerable?
Yeah, exactly what I say quite often, that you don't not even you have to even go to the jhanas. Even when your body disappears, this is before jhanas. You can be in meditation and not feel your body at all, like it has completely disappeared. There is no, you look at your body sort of in your mind and there is nothing there, it just draws blank. It is already a weird experience, and these experiences are really strange. And then when these kind of things happen, then that gives you the insight, like I existed without my body, and therefore, you know, then you get into the insight. Well, like then, okay, well then you have a lot more, like the insight into how the rebirth can happen, or like how the mind can exist without the body.
Yeah, and that is exactly right. And it's natural to see how people might take these kind of experiences and then say, oh yeah, the mind is permanent, right?
Yeah.
It can live without the body, it will live forever.
Yeah.
That's also not the right view. I'll get to that later. But that's that kind of separateness of body and mind, in a sense, is what you can get from these experiences. When I was a young lay person, I was always very skeptical, maybe you could call it cynical, yeah, about these special powers and rebirth, what kind of nonsense I thought it was. And then I heard it talk by Ajahn about, oh yeah, this Professor Ian Stevenson did all this research into rebirth and it's so convincing. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, you know, it's just biased and it doesn't make sense. I was very materialistic. But there are experiences in life which can change your view about this, much more so than any faith or research or whatever. Yeah? And these are experienced are already before the jhanas, but include the jhanas as well. And then you will really look differently on life. Yeah.
These are not just like your hindrances are a little bit of gone. No, like your mind is very, very clear. We can really see into with your vipassana jnanas.
Does this make sense to some people? How you can see how your mind is something in a way different from the body, yeah? Hopefully one day that'll make some sense. But it's still the first insight that the Buddha talked about in those list of 8. And then he goes through some of these powers that I've talked about, and then the ending of the defilements, the ending of the asavas, which is complete enlightenment. And when the Buddha teaches the gradual training, he doesn't really talk about the insight stages of stream entry or non-returning. It's just like, it's almost like, oh, you hear the Buddha talk, you get faith, you practice, and you become enlightened. That's sort of how he teaches, which is nice. But in many of the suttas, he talks about right view more specifically. This insight into body and mind is not right view yet, because you can have this view, and as I said, you can still think, oh, the mind is now eternal. Come out of a jhana, and you think, oh, this is something different. This is nibbana. This is eternal mind, or whatever. So this is not complete insight yet, but it's a start. Yeah? But before I go and talk about the ending of the asavas, enlightenment, which I want to talk about, I want to talk about insights of stream winning first. So stream winning, who's heard that term before? Yeah, who has not heard it before? Yeah, okay, let's see. And I want to teach everybody. So it's like the first time you really see the Buddha's teachings for yourself. You understand what is the purpose of the real end purpose of this training. Yeah? It's not just about being in jhana, it's not about being peaceful, it's not even about insight, but it's about ending suffering. And when you understand how suffering comes about, how it's ended, then that is stream entry, we call that, because you enter the stream that leads towards enlightenment and the end of suffering. That's why it's called stream entry. Okay. And usually this is explained as understanding the Four Noble Truths, but it can also be explained as insight into the origination, the coming to be, and the cessation, the ending of suffering, of life, of existence. And it's an interesting sutta, which I will just do a bit more quickly than I wanted to, because I noticed, me too, using too much time already. Although I have only 20 slides, I see here, still too many. So, as a faithful, energetic and mindful noble disciple, whose mind has been unified, you can be expected to understand this. First, pause here for a moment. Faithful, energetic, mindful, mind unified, mind in samadhi. Does that remind you of something? What does it remind you of, Venerable? 5 faculties, yes, but I was also hinting at like the gradual training in a sense, right? You get faith, then you get energy to practice, and then you mindfulness and so forth. But yeah, these are technically the 5 spiritual faculties. And now talks about the spiritual faculty of understanding or wisdom, panya. And what it talks about here is the stream winner's insight in quite a unique way, but it's very interesting to point this out. Because you'll see how central to the Buddha's teaching is this idea of rebirth. I mentioned it before already, but it is all over the place. And it's central to the insight into the Dhamma. So the stream winner will understand this. Transmigration or samsara, the round of rebirth, has no discernible beginning. You cannot find a start to it. You've been going from life to life to life. You can find no beginning to the transmigration of beings who roam around, going from one life to the other, obstructed by ignorance and chained or fettered, translated as well, by craving. Or hindered by ignorance, sometimes also translated. And this is part of the right view that you get. It's sort of based on jhanas as well. You see this thing inside of you, and you can sort of, this mind, you can ask yourself, has this been here before already? If it's like separate from the body, has it existed before this life? Now you can trace back. Yeah, it did. And then the stream winner will know that they have existed before, many, many lives before. They know that you can verify rebirth more directly in that way. And then they also know that is origination, basically. How suffering comes about in the Buddha's teaching is not just craving. It is true craving, but craving has an effect as well. And that effect is craving for more existence leads to rebirth. And that rebirth, that is what eventually causes the suffering. If you would just have one single life, then craving wouldn't really be a problem. It even says in one of the suttas, the Apanaka Sutta, I believe, the Buddhist says, if materialism was true, if you only lived for one life, then if you die, you would be saved. The problem would be solved, because suffering ends, so that's it. But there is a more bigger problem, which is this transmigration of beings, the rebirth.
The interesting, with that, into the idea of the inside, is like sometimes you get these questions like, can you be a stream enterer and then not be stream enterer anymore?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask, can you be a stream enterer and not be sure about rebirth? Because that's the question I get, and then I say no. It's like central to it.
Yeah.
Can you be a stream enterer and then not be a stream enterer anymore?
Can you go backwards? Come off the stream?
Yeah. Exit the stream.
But it's just, of course not. I mean, but it isn't this idea like, I had some ideas, and then, or they had ideas perhaps, and then they forgot them somehow.
Oh, okay, yeah,
it's not an insight. It's sort of like you see something. That's the idea of this kind of deep inside. You see it. You cannot not see it anymore. It's like it's not like you somehow forget. I was like, maybe there was a rebirth. I think I remember it.
Yeah. I was asked that question once as well, and this is how I answered it. Because I had a tissue box there. I said, "This is you before stream entry, and then stream entry happens, and part of you disappears. Can you put this back together again? No, it's part of it is ended, so you cannot put it back together again. It's just like part of your self."
Yeah, and that's the idea of it being a stream. Why is it called a stream? That like once you step into the stream, you cannot get out of the stream anymore.
Yes. So then it's not up to you anymore, basically.
No.
So as let me put it. Let it be that. But the total fading away and cessation of this dark mass of ignorance is what is peaceful and sublime. That is to say, the stilling of all willful action sankharas, the giving up of all acquisition of getting things, but also having things. Yeah. The ending of craving, fading away, viraga, cessation, and extinguishment, or nibbana. And this is, you first see how suffering has come about through rebirth, and then you also know afterwards that it can end, It can be an end to all this existence. And that if you let go of craving, then suffering will stop. This is one very interesting way that the insight of a stream winner is phrased, and not very often emphasized, so just wanted to highlight that. Is this interesting, or? Yeah? Yeah, okay, at least for some people. Excellent.
That is interesting, the stilling of all willful actions.
Sabba sankhara, samatha.
Yeah, but that's so are you saying that somebody who's in the stream don't have will anymore?
Well, they see what is first of all, they see what enlightenment is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in this context, willful action means like bad karma or any kind of karma. It's still, the enlightened beings still have like a will, but it doesn't come from delusion anymore.
Oh, right.
So that's what it means, like deluded willful actions in context, yeah. But it's interesting here, and talks about the end of craving.
Yeah.
So they understand like enlightenment in that sense, but it also seems to apply after enlightenment, the actual cessation of existence as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they could still like to have certain kind of foods.
Stream winners.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
They still have sensual desire as well.
What about if you go above that? You still crave for Dutch food?
Dutch food. I never crave for Dutch food. I don't think anybody would crave for Dutch food.
Yeah. Well, but let's say you are further in the path. You still have this craving for certain kind of foods, for example?
Well, at some point you give up the essential desires. Is that what you're getting at? Like non-returning?
Yeah.
And you.
So they don't have any preference for the sausages and bacon and eggs?
Yeah, preferences maybe, but not craving. You might say, my body works better on herbal tea than on coffee. Yeah. For example. So I'll have herbal tea. Because otherwise
so you cannot just look somebody and if they're like, oh, they seem to having bacon and eggs all the time. Therefore, They're not non-returner, once-returner arhat.
Yeah.
You kind of have that kind of insight into other people's behavior.
I'm not so concerned about other people's behavior myself,
well,
but I think that's right. It depends on how they eat it. Like, bacon, action, you know. Then that is a sign, but it can also be, herbal tea, or whatever. Oatmeal, and its desire just the same. But yeah, I suppose I still have preferences for certain foods. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the one, I can't remember now where the Buddha said, like even when he goes close to his country where he's from, he said he gets the food what his body prefers.
Oh, really? I can't remember that text.
Yeah.
Show me that once. It's kind of interesting, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and there's also some suttas where Sariputta wants to go on an alms round, but there's something happens in the Sangha and he can't go, and then he says, I couldn't do the thing that I wanted to. And he was already enlightened, right? So he still had like a preference to on not an alms round, on wandering.
Yeah.
Wandering.
Wandering.
Yeah. And then he had to stay in one place.
Yeah.
Yeah. You still have kind of wishes and desires in like a not craving kind of way. Yeah. Okay. But for now I'm talking just about stream winning. Just. Okay. All right. Do I want to go into this sutta? Well, I've got it here now, so I'd better. But this is one of really deep suttas, and which also talks about the insight of stream winning. And it is the Kachana Gota Sutta, and it talks about dependent origination and cessation, importantly, as well. And how the stream winner has insight that is different from any other views in the world. So here's the Buddha speaking. I'd like in these workshops to let the Buddha do much of the speaking instead of me filling in the words. So I'll just read out again. Kachana. This is the name of a monk. Kachana first asked, "What is right view? How would you define it? What is it? What constitutes right view?" And then the Buddha said, maybe herbal tea is not so good, actually, for my body.
Coffee is better.
Coffee better. Then the Buddha says, Kachana, the world mostly relies on a duality, on two kind of views. Most people in the world have either, this is my translation, the notion of survival, which literally is existence, and the notion of non-survival after death. Okay, I have to unpack this a bit without getting too caught up in the details because it'll be here forever. But what are these views? Most people in the world think one of these things, that after death you exist forever in heaven, like with God or whatever. It's a very common view. Yeah? Most people in the world probably have that on some level. And other people, they think that this is just the one single life that you have, and after that, it's for everybody, doesn't matter how you practice or what you do, that's the end. Yeah? So you either have the notion that you survive or exist forever after death, or people have the notion that after death nobody will survive. It's interesting, those are still the two views that everybody almost has. Unless you're like an agnostic, you don't have any views about it at all. But that's also not what the Buddha was. He also was not an agnostic. But he says, I don't have either of these views, that you exist forever, or that after death, for everybody, that's just it. All right? He says, I teach the view in the middle. And that view in the middle is the right view, which is the view that there is rebirth, like we've seen before. Transmigration has no discernible beginning. So it's not the case that there is, after death, everybody just ceases to be, because you've seen there's rebirth, right? So you let go of that like materialistic view of one life, of non-survival, as I translated, literally non-existence. But it's also, you also see the cessation of existence as a stream winner. So you know there's rebirth, but you also know that it's going to end. You won't exist forever, luckily, otherwise you'd always be in samsara in forever and ever. So you also let go of the notion of survival or eternal existence. And this is how right view stands in the middle of these two views in a way. It sort of accepts parts of it both, but also not completely. Does that make sense on an intellectual level at least? How that is different. Different idea, right? And to me, the first time I read the Four Noble Truths, I remember so clearly still, I thought like, this is unique, this is different, this is either the Buddha is completely crazy or he was really up onto something. Who teaches this? Nobody teaches this. Well, the Buddha teaches this. He says, yeah, there is life after that, but you don't want to have it go on forever. That's just endless suffering. So that's the middle view. And he explains it as such. If you see the origination of the world in the Buddha's words, in the Buddha's, what word am I looking for? The Buddha's way of speaking. The world does not refer to the physical world. Many other religions were actually concerned about the physical world. Does God create it? Do I become one with the whole universe? No, the Buddha said the world that you should be concerned with is of your personal existence in a way, or the five aggregates, or the six senses. And if you see the origin of that world, if you see the rebirth, by understanding in line with reality, then you won't no longer have the notion of non-survival with respect to that world. You don't think it'll cease for everybody when they die. But if you see the cessation as well, that eventually they will cease, these six senses will cease, then you also won't have the notion of survival. So here the Buddha paints this middle picture between what we usually call eternalism and annihilationism, a certain type of annihilationism, specifically, one lifetime. And this is also important. Again, in this workshop I can't do justice to these suttas. You can write whole books about it or have whole workshops about it. But also important is the insight into there being no self, which means there's no part in you that you are, or there's no essence inside of you. You think you wake up in the morning and you go to bed in the evening, it's the same person. Something has remained unchanged from the morning to the evening. There's still the same prem or something. That's your name of one of the people here. The same prem that lives this whole life. But that is a sense of self, like there's something inside that remains the same for a certain amount of time. But if you see through that, this is also part of stream winning. You go into these jhanas and you look inside, you see the mind, right, as I told you before, and that it is something separate from the body, but you can also see that mind is actually empty inside. There is, in a way, nothing there. It's just a process that goes on without any core. And if you see that, if you don't assume you have a self, then you know without question or doubt it is only suffering which arises and only suffering which ceases. Your knowledge about this does not depend on others. That is what constitutes right view. So this is what this means. This is very challenging, and if you don't find this interesting, then I hope one day you will. To me, this was always super fascinating, and one of the cool things about Buddhism is what the Buddha is saying here, that this whole life, this whole samsara, this whole existence, it's only suffering arising and suffering ceasing. That's it. There's nothing worth holding on to. It's all just dukkha happening and then passing away again. It's even the jhanas are still suffering arising, suffering then ceasing. So
interesting thing, sometimes people think that there is with the rebirth, when there's a being getting reborn, it's somehow not you not being reborn, as if there's like completely separate entity or existence when you get born. For me, it still feels like it's exactly the same you as you are now you. Sure, there's nothing there, but it's as if you are separate from yourself in 2 minutes' time. It's still you as you. There's no different kind of you-ness there. So that's what after rebirth, it's when you get born, you can't, it's still you as you are now, you. So from life to life. So it's like as if there's like, okay, when you get reborn, there's completely separate existence there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard this view as well. Like when people learn about rebirth, but also non-self, then they sort of combine it like, okay, so that means that when I die, then it causes some completely different new being to be reborn. Yeah, some of the suttas talk about that, and that would also be amount to annihilation as well of your fur, because you still assume that you are like a self, and that self then ends, and then another self is born.
Yeah, as if there is something not you getting in that rebirth. Yeah. And I guess it also comes from that idea that if there's like a stream of consciousness, and when you die you become one with the stream, and then there's a bit of like drips and drops comes down, and then and next time something gets born again, but it's not really you there, but there's this kind of drips and drops from the stream. But that is again what the wrong view from Buddhist perspective.
Yeah, the best way to when you start phrasing these things in terms of I or you get reborn, then you're already sort of twisting the language in a way.
Yeah, but you have to use the...
Yeah, you have to use it. But the best thing to think about it is just what gets reborn is just the aggregates, without any self. And these aggregates are changing during life, but also from life to life. But it's also not like a completely different, disconnected set of experiences. In a way.
Yeah. Because I saw you this morning, you will look exactly the same you do
now. I might look a little bit more tired, but yeah.
You want to take a break?
Well, one more slide.
Okay.
Because that is the last one about stream winning, and actually leading up to full enlightenment. This is a discussion between two monks. Some of these texts are not directly connected with the gradual training, but I sort of woven them together to make it connected to it. This is Venerable Narada and Venerable Savita. And Narada says, Venerable Savita, apart from faith, apart from personal preference, tradition, reasoning, thinking, or accepting a view after pondering it, I know and see that, talking about full extinguishment here, what happens after an unenlightened being passes away, is the cessation of existence. Right? This is what the stream winner knows, that existence will come to an end. Bhava nirodha. They know that. And then Venerable Savita asks, then are you enlightened, are you an arahant, without defilements, without asavas? And he says, although by understanding in line with reality, he is referring to stream entry, I have seen clearly that extinguishment, nibbana, is the cessation of existence. Here it talks about, as I said before, not just nibbana as in the ending of craving, but a higher kind of nibbana, the ending of the aggregates. Existence stands for the aggregates, basically. Although I know that, I am not yet enlightened without defilements. Imagine along a desert road there was a well without a rope and bucket. A man came along who was oppressed and scorched by the heat, tired and thirsty. When he looked down in the well, he would know that there was water in it, but he would not yet physically have it. So this is like a comparison for having right view. You know what the end of suffering is. It's like seeing the water in the well, but you don't have yet reached it. So you know what enlightenment is. You also know what happens to an enlightened being after they pass away, to phrase it in that way. But you yourself might still get reborn for a few more lifetimes. This is because of those habits that we mentioned this morning still being there. Okay, so those are very deep ideas. This afternoon, after the break, I'll talk about some more deep ideas about the asavas. But just to summarize, this insight of the stream winner comes from jhanas, having deep experiences into life, and then seeing that nothing in the jhanas is worth keeping. Not even the peace of the jhanas is worth keeping. It's like suffering in a deep sense as well. I know we often talk about how happy and peaceful the jhanas are, but they're like tools to understand that even those experiences are suffering compared to the cessation of existence, which is more peaceful and sublime. And so even the jhanas are like trash that you should throw in the garbage can. Yeah? And then throw it into the garbage can and crush it all, crush all of the aggregates, throw them away. And the Buddha says, like little kids, they build castles out of sand castles. And then at some point they realize, oh, it's just a fake sand castle, and then they just throw it away. So hopefully one day you also throw away these aggregates. And we'll talk about that more after a short break, and then we'll also do some questions and answers. Oh, okay. I was hoping it would do the reverse.
Beep. Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break if you want to take use toilet or meditate for 10 minutes, and then we continue with the questions.
All right. The people outside want to come in. I know the weather's much nicer out there, but
No, I think it's nicer up down here instead of
maybe.
with the aircon. Okay, any questions coming up?
Can I ask just for, I know these are deep ideas and we can have long discussions, but can I ask for people to keep their questions short and one question per person? Does that sound reasonable to you as well?
And what in topic of jhanas and stream entry?
Well, whatever they are interested in asking, but just...
Ajahn, can I ask one?
Yeah.
SN34,
Sorry?
SN34,
Sanitanika 34.
Samadhi Mulaka, SN34 Sutra.
Yeah, okay.
Buddha says there are 4 meditators. One meditator is skilled in immersion but not in entering it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the cause?
What's the cause for it? That you're skilled to enter the jhanas. Is that what you're asking?
It says skilled in immersion but not in entering it.
Oh, okay. So how do you get skilled in entering jhanas? Is that the question?
Yeah, why is that? I mean,
Why?
Yeah, why skilled in immersion and not in entering it? It says.
Yeah. I mean, how do you get jhanas? Like, how do you? And it's actually one of the practices where the Buddha said that, like you become skilled in it, and it's like you master the jhanas as well. Like you know how to long to be in there, how to get there, how to long to be, all those things. Yeah. Okay, Venerable Sunyo can answer how do you master it?
Well, there's different. Some of the suttas talk about entering jhana and emerging from jhana, and also about the skills of having that. And I think it has to do with also being able to stop yourself from attaining jhanas. Sometimes when you don't want to go into jhanas, even though you're maybe enlightened already, things like that. To make this a bit more sense, there was a monk called Ajahn, the old one, who said, you cannot make your mind go into samadhi, but when your mind is ready, you cannot prevent it either. Right? And that is really helpful in a meditation kind of sense, like, oh yeah, I can't help it to get it either. But in a way, when the Buddha is talking about skill, about entering, then you have some kind of control about that as well. Like, your mind might have abandoned the hindrances, but you're like, oh, I need to give a Dhamma talk, so better not enter jhanas. So you have like
exactly, and that's the thing there. We talked about the whole morning about hindrances, right? So basically, you just get good at like how to work with the hindrances, and then you automatically, when you sit down, then your hindrances are reduced. You go into the secluded dwelling place, and then you enter jhanas. But so yeah.
Ajahn, what is the condition that has to be met to enter a jhana? I suppose it's a natural process that when certain conditions are met, your mind naturally enters a jhana.
You can continue. Well, I just for me, I mean, instead of dwelling on the same idea, that sure you know how to work with the hindrances, but then also you could think about it this way. It's almost like once you start getting more and more used to the deep meditations, it's the mind naturally gravitates towards that. It's like if you're inspired of something, the memory of it is so strong. I mean, these are really, really deep, happy, really blissful stages. I mean, just even before you enter there. So you just sort of, it pulls you in. It's like the inspiration gets you there. Just when you sit down and you think of jhanas, you naturally start inclining towards the jhanas. So the thing is like how to get there first time. It's like you really, or the first times, but after that it becomes easier and easier. Somebody like, who's really further in the path, it's not really difficult to get there at all, so to speak.
Thank you.
The Buddha talked, there's different ways to answering this question, and I agree with everything Venerable Mudito just said. But also, if you look at it technically in terms of the suttas, the Buddha always says there's two things you need to be withdrawn from or separated from in order to attain the jhanas. And one is the unskillful qualities, in other words, the 5 hindrances. And the other one is the 5 senses, or the kamas, the 5 sense objects. So an enlightened person is always without the 5 hindrances, because they don't have these underlying tendencies anymore. But they're not always in the jhanas. And why is that? Because they still need to let go of these 5 senses to go into jhanas. So they still have to be what technically says viviceva kamehi. Yeah. And again, that's one of these debated over terms, but that is how I interpret it, and I think Mudito as well.
If anything, it's like only thing to add into that. It's sort of like it, and it's supported by seclusion, the seclusion of mind and seclusion of the body, which is, I don't know. You're probably not going to talk about it today, but what supports it. But it's really.
I can add some more slides.
No, but it's really you sort of get drawn. You move away from the world of 5 senses, if you could think about it that way.
I just wanted to ask about, so a lot of this process of becoming and experiencing jhanas and all of that's really connecting with me, and it's sounding very similar to basically the idea of like Hegel's dialectic, where you've got essentially a continual experience of things kind of synthesizing together, where, like, say, a master and a slave are mutually dependent on each other. As soon as a slave stops existing, there can't be a master kind of deal. And I'm just wondering how much that lines up with all of this, because when we're talking about jhanas, obviously we're going to have to synthesize the right kinds of conditions, and it just seems like all a very natural kind of collection, I guess.
Well, that's a very broad and deep question. One way to think about this is, so with Hegel's dialectic, you could say one of the theses is you exist forever, and the other thesis is you die and nobody exists after that. What is the middle in between? That's what we talked about. And you can see this through the jhanas as well, because you see that there's something separate from the body which might exist after death, but you also see that it has no essence to it, that it is just an empty process. And that process is fueled by desire and ignorance, but if you take that away, that desire and ignorance, that the rebirth will stop and the mind will also stop. Yeah? And I talked before the break, or we talked about the hindrances, everybody agrees, okay, the hindrances go into the trash. Hindrances I don't like, they go in the trash. But my mind without hindrances, that is something beautiful, that's something worth holding on to, people think. And then the stream winner realizes, oh, that should also go in the trash. I should not keep holding on to even the peaceful mind. But it's difficult, because you have these attachments. And then the arahants, they realize, oh, that also goes into the trash. So they actually let it go of that as well. And I don't know, that doesn't actually answer your question directly, but I hope it still gives some food for thought.
I think, just quickly, the idea of like holding on to jhanas to me seems like a bit of an impossibility, because if we look at that kind of framework of thesis and antithesis becoming the synthesis, which then becomes the new thesis, holding on to a jhana, like, we can try, but the synthesis doesn't really base itself on just that one piece. It's going to move regardless, it seems.
Yeah, in a sense, the jhanas.
The problem is you can still get really caught up into those ideas of like you're somehow more powerful, and then that really messes up with your head if there's nobody tell you otherwise.
Yeah. In a few suttas, the Buddha says, by letting go your object, that's how you attain jhana. So in a way, the jhanas are a result of letting go. So inside the jhanas, you cannot attach to jhanas because you have no hindrance. But when you come out of it, then you might reflect upon that experience and say, oh, that was pretty nice, I want to experience that again. So then that craving comes back. So you let go, but not forever, if that makes sense.
Or you
Yeah.
you own the insights. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, the gradual path towards enlightenment, to end our suffering. Here you talk a lot about the jhanas, How about the vipassana, the mind, and the feelings, okay? The mind was, Buddha was telling us, the mind is a forerunner of all states, okay? Take, for example, how to deal with our stress, anxiety, or depression, the thing, from our mind, all these things, and gradually you know these things, then you improve, becomes less suffering, till you reach enlightenment. Equanimity, too. The 7 factors towards enlightenment: equanimity.
Look, the morning workshop, I would say. So those would be the categories. Even those stresses and all that, that would be part of the hindrances. But then you enter the deep meditations, and you are removed from that world for quite a while, and then you come out of that, and then you have the insights, and then you less and less more likely less and less fall into that idea, into those things.
Yeah, that is. You talk about jhanas. How about the other way, vipassana?
Vipassana. Okay, Venerable Sunyo can talk about the vipassana.
Oh, yeah. I talked about vipassana jnana before the break.
Oh.
I literally used the
Oh,
word.
Hedy, you were sleeping. The hindrance of what's that like? Your hindrance was keeping away. See, you missed it. Venerable Sunyo talked about the vipassanas. No, Eddie, it doesn't exist that much in the suttas. What Venerable Sunyo was saying. I mean, sure, this vipassana is just sort of like the contemplation or the insights. They come quite automatically after this. The jhanas, it's quite automatic because they're so powerful experiences. But sure, then, to really go further in the path, you have to keep reflecting on it.
Yeah.
How about equanimity? How does it fit into the gradual path? Understanding equanimity?
When you have completely let go, then you will always be equanimous. And that's what the Arahant does. And I'll talk about the Arahant in a moment to sort of move the conversation.
There's different levels of equanimity,
Yeah.
Eddie. That's the thing. There's you can have this kind of day-to-day equanimity, or then you can go into the deep equanimity. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody. Good
Moira?
questions. Then
Moira?
one more? Okay.
Quick.
Yeah, the stream entry bit was very quick. I was wondering whether you could do a workshop one day into more detail, whether the slides that you put up, whether that was from one sutta or collection of suttas that you read, because there's quite a bit in there. And
Yeah. There's much more to say. Yep. Can do a workshop about any individual sutta. But it sounds like a good idea. Thank you.
Ajahn, can I just ask a quick question from the online?
Yes.
Just this one. But I'm not sure whether I understand fully. So the person says, Dear Venerable Ajahns, you mentioned earlier that in a meditation stage before jhana, there can be a situation where body disappears, and this seeing the mind as mind and distinct from body can be cause for insight and faith in rebirth. Can this be somewhat literal? The mind not yet still enough for jhana may see other minds plus senses outside of what conventionally identifies with?
Yeah, although the Buddha puts things very black and white, this is my view, and that you have to attain these jhanas before all these special knowledges that he calls them. Let me bring up the slide actually. It can also happen that people, for example, remember past lives, or they have some insight into the body and mind before completely having experienced the complete jhanas. So it's not completely black and white. But when it comes to real deep right view of the stream winner and arahant, then the jhanas are necessary.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I would say, again, they have very, very deep levels where jhanas these are experiences of getting closer in alignment. These are footsteps of the Buddha. What I'm saying that even if you get into the stage where the body is completely, it's gone. There is no, I always think of it this way. Even if you close your eyes, you just sort of, you know your body. It has this kind of, there's this kind of shadow image of your body. You know the limits of your body. It has this kind of mind-made almost feel to it. But when you get into this kind of, this is not even that steep stage of meditation yet, but when you have that kind of stage where it's like you just, the body has disappeared completely, and it what happens often, how it disappears, it doesn't just all of a sudden go. It sort of gradually starts moving away, and then you look at that image of that body, and it's just, you don't see it. It's like you're looking into a void. And then it's just such a weird experience that it's like, people who get there, it's not like, oh, the body was gone. It's just sort of like, what? What happened? My body was completely gone. It was just such a weird experience. I mean, these are not even, you're not even going into these stages when Sunyo was talking about. It just gives you that insight. It can happen. And I existed, but there was no body. It was like, in my mind, I could not see the body. It's just the weirdest experience. And so it gives this kind of, perhaps not inside what the Buddha was talking about quite often, these suttas, but it's just sort of like you cannot comprehend it. They're just strange experiences. And these are like, and again, these are not really the deep meditations yet. That's what I would say. And you won't forget these experiences. You're just always, your mind just always goes there, like, wow, I existed without my body.
All right. Thank you very much for the questions, and Venerable for the answers as well. So here we're back to the gradual training. Talked about this before, and yeah, I cannot discuss every little aspect here. So now I want to move to the very end of the gradual training, the ending of the defilements, the last thing that needs to happen before full enlightenment. And is the ending of the asavas that I translate as defilements. I'll come back to that in a moment.
Not the ones, the defilements I was talking about this morning.
Yeah, that's why I pointed that out. This is the standard passage from the gradual training that happens in many suttas where the Buddha talks about this. Again, it starts with the same thing. When your mind has been unified in this way, when it comes out of a jhana, it's cleansed and purified, free from blemishes and impurities. It becomes really unworkable, still undisturbable. We've seen that before. But instead of directing it to one of these other special knowledges or stream winning, you direct it to the ending of the defilements. So this is when you already understand that all of existence should go in the trash, but now you really want to completely let go, ending all the defilements. You fully, if you do this, you fully know suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the practice leading to its cessation in line with reality. You fully know the Four Noble Truths. The stream winner already knows about suffering and its cessation and so forth, but to fully, completely understand it is for complete enlightenment. You know the defilements, their origin, their cessation, and the practice leading to their cessation in line with reality. So the word asavas here is interesting. It's again one of these words where I would argue don't analyze it too literally, because it's from context that we get the meaning. But literally it has something to do with flowing or streaming. That's what the verb underlying this word means, to flow, basically. And it's pretty clear to me that the Buddha adopted this word from the Jains, who were other religious practitioners in his time. And to the Jains, the karma was like physical particles that flowed into your mind and stuck to your mind and kept it bound to earth by physically tying it there. I don't want to go into the details of the Jains view, but they already used the word asava before the Buddha came along. And so to the Jains, it was like defiling particles that sort of make the mind dirty, That's why I used the word defilement. That was the Jain idea. The Buddha did not accept that idea, literally, but he did still use the word asavas, and I think therefore it has this general meaning of defilements or taints, sometimes translated. And the idea of flowing for the Buddha has less importance than that had for the Jains. It is there in a little bit behind it as well, but not as much. Does that make sense? Like historical context a little bit? Okay. When you know and see this, the cessation of suffering and so forth, your mind will be liberated from the defilement of sensual desire, the kama asava, the desire for existence, the bhava asava, and ignorance, the avidya asava. You will understand that the spiritual life, the brahmacharya, is finished, that the work is done, that rebirth has ended, so there will be no hereafter, there will be no next life. And this is how one of the major ways that is continually explained in the suttas, how the fully enlightened one differs from the stream enterer is, the stream enterer knows that existence will cease, as we've seen Narada said before, but they don't know yet when. It's like after a certain amount of lives, they know it will end, but the enlightened one know that rebirth has completely ended, and because there's no more of these asavas underneath that drive the mind going from life to life, and they see the absence of these asavas, and from in some way, I don't know exactly how, but they conclude from that they will not be reborn again. They can tell that. That is how they know that they are enlightened. That rebirth has ended, so there will be no life again. That is when I asked the gradual training, but what for? And this is the end goal, to not be reborn again. Who wants to go through life after life after life after life after life after life, again and again? And some lives are pretty okay. Some lives might even be in what we call a heaven. Really be blissed out. And some life, you're even better. You end up in Bodhinyana, and you're a monk and you get to live with all these wonderful people. And okay, well, it's suffering as well, to be honest. But who wants to go through that again and again? It's like the trash man comes to your house, and instead of you throwing away the trash, they come and bring it to you all the time.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, like, we tend to forget when we live the day-to-day life, we lose our health, or parents get sick and old, and you just sort of like, it was like this dukkha. It's like, I hate it, that there's so much like this suffering of I'm losing my health now. But then that should be the inside. It was like, this is what the Buddha was talking about. This is why I want to end all of this cycle of rebirth, because this is what I get over and over again. You get sick again. Your parents are going to get sick again and old, and this is what you experience. It always comes in when you get a rebirth.
Yeah. The Buddha didn't start his spiritual search saying, I'm unhappy, can I find some more contentment and happiness in this life? That was not his question. It's like, I get a reborn all this again and again and again. How can I end this? It's important to know that the Buddha started his quest there, although we might not personally not start there. We might start with, like, I'm depressed, I want to go get some bit more happiness from these talks, which is completely fine. But we get to the deeper ideas, then rebirth is in the Dhamma again and again and again. And I like to re-emphasize that, because it is too often, in my view, still avoided to talk about it directly, like about rebirth, how it's central to stream winning and central to enlightenment, insights into rebirth.
Dukkha.
And dukkha, but dukkha also has a wider meaning if you look at it in context of rebirth, instead of just a single life dukkha, Yeah. And we get to that now, actually.
Nice bridge.
So this is a very nice bridge. So now we jump to another sutta where the Buddha talks about this insight in a little bit more detail, that rebirth has ended. He talks about an enlightened being. you understand that when your body falls apart after death of this life, when life comes to an end, all that is experienced, all that you can experience, not being enjoyed because you have no more craving, will cool off right then. Cool off? What do you mean cool off? It is like a little bit of a literal, it's an idiom literally translated, but it means that all experience will end when you pass away as an enlightened being. Yeah? All consciousness, all feeling, perception, and all the aggregates, they come to an end. It's the end of suffering. And people don't want to hear that often. Like, I want to, at least you practice this whole gradual training, all this faith, listening to talks, sitting here in the heat of the gradual training workshop. At least I want to get something out of it, At least I want to enjoy for the rest of eternity to be this mind or this consciousness or whatever. Yeah? But no, that's not the goal. That's not the middle way. That would be an eternal kind of idea, an idea of survival or existence. Yeah? And the Buddha said, no, throw that away as well, that idea. Yeah? In the trash again. I don't want to keep coming back to it, but it's right in front of my view, so hard to avoid. But all experience, all consciousness goes in the trash. We don't need to hold on to it. That is the only way to end suffering. Yeah? And the Buddha says, if you possess this understanding, by the way, one of the suttas I really, really like, because it's as clear as can be what the final cessation is like. It says, when your body falls apart, when life comes to an end, all that is experienced will cool off, and only bodily remains will be left of the enlightened being. The corpse will be there, but the mind is just stopped. No more of that. And if you possess this understanding, you possess this supreme establishment of understanding. Because this is the supreme noble understanding, namely the knowledge of the ending of all suffering. You know that when you eventually pass away as an enlightened being, all suffering will then end. Yeah? That is the supreme knowledge, the supreme noble understanding. Oh, that would be cool to have. You'd be so relaxed. No more lives. But even as a stream inner, it's going to end pretty soon in context of things, You've been reborn thousands, hundreds of thousands of times. It's just a little bit more suffering. You can deal with that. Would that be nice to know? Yeah. So stream winning is like a little arahantship in a way. So don't underestimate that kind of an insight. It's from the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, by the way. I'll now get back to the asavas in a moment, because this sutta talks about them in an interesting way that I think is really helpful. When you were ignorant, when you were not enlightened, you used to have longing, wanting, and desire. These three things mean the same thing. This is just an example of how the Buddha uses these synonyms all the time to get the point across. You used to have malice, ill will, and hate. You used to have ignorance and delusion. Ignorance and delusion, or avidya and moha, are basically two sides of the same coin. They're the same thing in a way. Yeah? But now you're fully enlightened, you abandon them. You cut off their roots, made them like a palm stump. And the idea is you cut off a palm and never grows back again. You put an end to them so that they will not re-arise in the future. And if you possess this peace, the knowledge that you don't have ill will and so forth, no desire, no delusion, you possess the supreme establishment of peace. Because this is the supreme noble peace, namely the subsiding of desire, anger, and delusion. Yeah? It's like the supreme peace that you can experience, in a way, to have no desire, anger, and delusion. Again, that's a useful idea, even though this is talking about the end of the path. It can be helpful right now. Yeah, we talk about, Eddie said already, I think rightly pointed it out, you've been talking about jhana so much. Yeah, and then when we talk about that so much, you can naturally have this desire to experience these things, desire to have that experience of the body and mind that Mudito talked about. And you desire this. And they think, if I have jhanas, then I get real peace. But the supreme peace is to have no desire, have no anger and delusion. And in a way you can aim for that right now. Like, I've got this sutta in my kuti from the Dhammapada, and it says, I won't quote it literally, but it says about, even if it rained golden coins, you could not fulfill your sensual pleasures. But the disciples of the Noble One, of the Buddha, they delight in the ending of craving. Delight in the ending of craving. You don't delight in jhanas, no, you delight in not craving. So when I sit meditating, not craving, so nice to not crave, you know. I don't need jhanas, I don't need insight, I don't need enlightenment, I don't need parinibbana, just don't crave. And in a way, that is like the supreme peace.
What does the
taste of it?
What does the non-craving feel like?
Yeah, like contentment, you know, just nothing to do. It's like a part of you disappears in a way as well, because craving also always comes from this sense of I. It's just.
I think the contentment, that's the thing. It's like we forget, we talk about higher and higher happinesses, and contentment is one of the highest happinesses. So that you experience contentment. It's when you're content, it's just you know that the opposite, the craving, has disappeared. It just feels really nice, like really, really nice.
Yeah. But in a way, it's also trash to be thrown away.
Contentment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's also kind of suffering. It's still conditioned in a way. So although it's the supreme noble peace that you can experience, the ending of desire, it's still an experience. And earlier we've seen that the Buddha says, after death, all that is experienced will pass away. So in a way, that's even more peaceful, you know, when even the contentment ceases. But since you cannot experience that, that's why I think here he calls the supreme peace just this. In a way, there's more to say about that maybe in a moment.
I'm just saying that sometimes it's nice to use words which has a feeling tone to it, instead of just like have this negation of some kind of feeling, and then you cannot imagine it in your mind's eye.
Instead of the subsiding of desire, you say contentment.
Yeah.
Instead of the subsiding of anger, you say like kindness or acceptance. Yeah. And instead of subsiding of delusion, like the wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Okay, now we come back to these asavas. Is everybody still following along? I know I skipped from sutta to sutta a little bit, but it's just nice to put these things together. That's what we can do during these workshops, right? It's not just one sutta class, but putting things together, different ideas.
Coming close to an end. Hold on. 3 more slides.
2 in a way.
2, okay.
The last is just the first slide again.
Okay. Stay awake. You can do this.
But in this discussion about how many slides there are, I could have had time to discuss a few more slides, though. Okay. But everybody stay awake, because we're getting to the end, and it's a really beautiful and inspiring sutta quote that some of you will know, that we'll come to in a moment. So when you have this understanding and peace, and also Buddha talked about relinquishment as well, and also what else was there? It was talked about 4 qualities, but anyway, understanding, peace, relinquishment, and do you know? Truth, right, the knowledge of truth as well, in a way, knowledge of nibbana. Yeah. Then this is my translation: the currents of imagination won't flow in you. What do I mean? When the currents, that is the word asava, of imagination, or that's also translated as conceiving, Samaññaphala, don't flow in you, you are called a peaceful sage. Can you see, Eddie? Okay, good. Yeah. So the currents of imagination, like this word imagination, I like it a little bit more than conceiving. If you look up in a dictionary for Samaññaphala, they all give imagination as well, but for some reason everybody translates it as conceiving. But it has the same idea. What does it mean? It means we're imagining something. If you imagine something, it's like something that doesn't exist, right? Imagine something that is imaginary, yeah? like that doesn't exist.
Oh,
so,
like dragons.
yeah, and what did the Buddha mean? Not dragons, but I am. It's an imagination. Yeah? Maybe in Finland there are actual dragons, no? Maybe. I am is an imagination. The whole idea that there's a self in there, that sense that we have, that we are the center of life, that things happen to us and that we make decisions, that we experience things, that is an imagination. It's not real, it's a delusion. And the enlightened one have completely let go of that. They don't experience life from a center. It's just life, that's all. It's just experiences, but no experiencer. Yeah? As the Buddha said in the Bahia Sutta, in the scene, only the seen, no seer. It's just experience, nobody, no I there. Yeah? I am, that idea that I am is just an imagination. And the Buddha also says, I will exist, I won't exist, they are also imaginations. I abbreviated that, but these are the ideas of eternalism and annihilationism again, right? I will exist is the idea that I will exist after death. I won't exist is the idea that I will, as a self, will stop existing. That's all wrong views. The only way to avoid these wrong views is the middle path again, of there being no self, but just suffering arising and ceasing. And inside of that suffering is no place for a core. It's hard to put it into words, but I hope it makes some sense at least. And imagination is a disease, a tumor, an arrow, like something that hurts, right? If you overcome all imagination or all conceiving, you are called a peaceful sage, or a sage at peace. Santo Muni. Yeah? One of the Anagyarikas is called Santo Muni, and we call him Amandus, but his legal name, he changed it to Santo Muni. And I always call him Santo Muni instead of Amandus, and he's always so happy, because that's his Pali name. It's peaceful sage. Now the Buddha says, this is the last slide I have. The peaceful sage will not be born, will not age, and will not die. They will not be agitated and will not long. What do you think that the Buddha meant by this quote? The peaceful sage will not be born, will not age, and will not die. Did the Buddha not age and die? Right? What does this mean? Yes, please. Right, that's one way of looking at it. Perfect, yeah. As we've just seen, I am is an imagination, right? So in reality there is no I, so there is no I who gets born, there's no I who ages, there's no I who dies. So in a way, if that's what you mean by emptiness, I suppose, the Arahant, there is no the Arahant or the sage, it's just 5 aggregates, but there's no sage inside, no self inside who dies and who ages. So in a way, there is no aging and suffering in a way for a self. Yeah? Does that make sense? Yeah? Maybe you think it makes sense, but hopefully one day it really makes sense. And I've sometimes explained it like this. And it's not from the suttas, but I think it's really nice way to think about it. That if you understand what we mean by parinibbana, like the cessation of experience, the cessation of consciousness, yeah, from the view of a self, that is what enlightenment is like. Because the being who you think you are, the sense of self, will cease at enlightenment. Yeah. So you don't become enlightened. And Shamari, you won't become enlightened. Yeah. And when enlightenment happens, the mind continues on without you. You're left behind. You go in the trash as well. In a way, right? And then the mind and body continue alone. So you don't suffer anymore in a sense. Because you were already, as Ajahn Chah called it, you die before you die. That's what he talked about. Yeah. So that's one way to interpret this quote indeed, that they will not die because there's no sense of self, so nobody identifies with death. The Buddha himself explains it a little bit differently, and I think both interpretations are implied actually, but he says, since there's nothing in them, in the enlightened being, by which they could be reborn, no asavas to drive them on, no hindrances to a next life, to drive them on to a next life. Not being reborn, how could they even age? So the idea is here, if they pass away, they won't be reborn, so how can they get old again? It won't not be possible. So here the idea, again, the Buddha brings it back to rebirth, as I said so often. Not aging, if you're not reborn, you don't age. How could you re-die again? It won't be possible, You will die one more time in a way. The Buddha still died and aged, but they don't get reborn, so they will not keep aging and dying. Not dying, how could they be agitated, right? You don't, if the aggregates have ceased, how could there be agitation? Not agitated, what would they long for? So, I asked you at the start, the gradual training, but what for? You all gave me different answers, and I think they were all perfect answers. Everybody practices for something different. But if you aim for these highest goals, then remember that in the end it's about ending the cessation of existence, as Venerable Narada said. And that is really what the practice is for, because that is when all suffering ceases. And you're no longer reborn, then you're no longer aging and dying and suffering. And that is the end of all suffering, and really the end of the gradual training in a sense. And I hope you will all find that knowledge and peace that the Buddha talked about in this very life. And hopefully Venerable Mudito and I, and Venerable Munishara, Venerable Karunika, and Ajahn Brahmali, and thanks to Lehar, we have contributed to your ending of suffering by teaching you a little bit about the Buddha's teachings. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay. We still got a
few minutes.
10
Are we going to
minutes
have questions?
for some questions. Yeah. Not for answers, we only have time for questions.
Questions?
Sorry to ask so many questions. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, yeah.
One of the 8 powers included divine hearing. Do you mind just explaining very quickly what that means? Is it like you can hear other people talking, or is it like some thought in your mind or some hearing that's outside of you?
Yeah.
Because I've had that before, and I don't know who's speaking to me, but I hear it.
Okay, yeah, the idea is, well, maybe you can explain.
No, you can.
Yeah, the idea is that you can hear divine beings talking, like that's why it's called divine hearing, but also sometimes the idea is that you can hear things from far away. I'm not exactly sure how that would work, but it's like the idea that somebody is talking outside and you could hear them from inside. But it has to do with your mind, It's not like your physical ear. That's why usually it's translated divine ear or something, but I translate that hearing because like your mind hears something from a distance. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but that's how it's explained in the suttas.
So you're tapping into a frequency sort of thing and you hear something?
Yeah, maybe. Could be.
Thank you.
Maybe you know more about it than me from a practical perspective.
Yeah, it's not explained there really in the suttas.
Yeah.
Huh? Ultimate release, Nibbana. That's it.
I just wanted to quickly ask, so going back to that dialectic model again, it's, especially the ending of this workshop, you've very well illustrated how I think the Buddha's concepts all actually kind of unify and converge on each other, and they can't actually be separated. They can be taught separately, but what I'm seeing is how, rebirth ties in exactly with this cycle of suffering, and you can't easily separate the two. What this process looks like to me through that dialectic lens is that achieving enlightenment and moving to Nibbana, it's almost like a process of undoing, which is a funny paradox to think that there are actions taken in that direction, but we're looking at, no longer proliferating ill will and other factors. It's kind of like we're engaging in that process of synthesis where we're no longer allowing that ill will to then become part of the next cycle of synthesis here. I'm just curious if that's that and the fact that the Buddhist concepts couldn't be separated, if that's like a good way to summarize the whole workshop, basically.
Could be, but I must admit I didn't completely understand everything that you said. I am familiar with the Hegel's dialectic, but I'm not exactly sure how you're applying it. So maybe could you rephrase it in a different way, maybe for us to understand?
Yeah, sure. So it's essentially like if we were to treat the process of life, as a constant emergence, and when we go and we work on, say, no longer proliferating, say, ill will, we're not allowing that to continue emerging, or basically taking away these parts. And it seems like what is happening here when it comes to like letting go and sense restraint, all of this is a process of undoing.
Yeah, it is. It's an actually interesting way of looking at it. There's like, once you start sort of unraveling something, then the whole thing starts unraveling. It's like you start undoing things, and then the whole path, the whole things work to keep taking away that sandcastle. That you start nibbling from the corner, and it's literally starts from the just start taking some of the hindrances away in the meditation, that you get meditation, and then you start understanding more of the Buddha's teaching, and it's just a snowball effect going towards jhanas, and then that makes the speed to go faster again, and then unraveling the whole thing.
I understand now what you're saying, I think, and I think it is a good way to sum it up. And usually I teach this when I teach retreats, and I teach about the jhanas, but you can apply the same idea to enlightenment and stream entry as well. It's not about you going out and getting something new that you didn't have before, in a way. It's all about letting go of things. Yeah? It's like letting go of delusion. Okay, you get some insights, but those insights also you have to let go of again. So that's why I brought this trash truck, right? To bring it back once more, because I can.
Yeah, I just
all of life, it's not like you're getting trash out of back from the truck. You just throw it all away. You let go. Right?
Yeah, you don't become like a bigger and bigger person, and you just like finally you understand that there's a more and more knowledge. It's just sort of those, you sort of disappear more, and that is the knowledge, what comes out of it.
No, I think this whole workshop has given me a lot better understanding of how it all comes together on its own, actually, and because I'd already had an understanding that, like, even though compassion and patience are two separate concepts, that they're kind of, when you get to the deeper levels of it, they really do converge on each other, and it's just all of it comes together.
Yeah, this just brings up something separately, which is not an early Buddhist text. These are supposed to be workshops about the early text. But in Mahayana tradition, they have this concept of the Buddha nature. Yeah, and some people think it's like an eternal mind kind of idea, but I don't agree with that. But I do agree with the idea that, like, in a way, everything you need for enlightenment is already within you, in a sense, and you just need to let go what obstructs that Buddha nature, in a way, inside of you. It's a nice way to think about it, anyway. Not to make it too metaphysical, but practically that's a nice idea. It also helps you let go of craving to become something, or to
it's almost like we all have the possibility to become enlightened. It's like we have the ability. You're not going to be going in the Olympics and winning the was the Winter Olympics coming in Italy now this year? So you're not going to go all of a sudden from WA to win the 30-kilometer cross-country skiing. No, it's going to be somebody else, not us.
Yeah.
But Buddha nature makes us possible that we can all get enlightened. Leha, there's one question here. Like, we'll do short ones now for you. Leha, there's one here as well. She wanted to. Okay, short.
Yeah. Okay. Ajahn, those who get to jhanas without the right view, this is
who get to jhanas without right view.
Right view. They probably go for psychic powers or whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you said, once you are in jhana, do you get some good insights, and next time you come back, you know a little bit of, you have a better right view? Does it come?
You cannot really get to jhanas if you don't have enough of letting go, which is right view in a sense. But so you mean that like the right view of Dhamma, that you don't really. So you don't have to have the corrected right view in order to get jhanas.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. So, but once you are in jhana, don't your mind get refined and you have the
but
some insights?
you can misinterpret that if you really come from a wrong way of you've been taught wrong way. You can still misinterpret that. That could be a unification of God with God, for example.
I see. So they will never get the right view through jhana. That's what I was saying.
Not without the right teachings. For example, if you never heard the Dhamma, the Buddha hasn't existed. Mm-hmm. You could still get, let go, and then the jhanas could come. But right view wouldn't come out of it, not the ultimate right view.
Yeah, and you ask about other people attaining jhanas and then having wrong view afterwards.
Yeah.
It's a nice question, but reflect upon yourself and say, okay, I will not be one of those people.
That's right.
Right? Well, I don't know how that works for other people, but for me, the way it works is going to be, I have jhana and then I reflect upon it, like the monks told me. Sure. Don't take it as something permanent or ultimate happiness or as a self. I will take it as impermanent and suffering and without a self, and I'll reflect in that way. Then you might get right view from that experience.
Yep.
Thank you, Ajahn. Sure. Thank you for delivering this course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the teachings. It seems like the end goal is to be enlightened being, right? So what do they do? Like just exist and be peaceful and live forever? Or is there any goal in that state?
To be peaceful and live forever? Do you want to rephrase that? To live forever?
That's somehow I just got what the enlightened...
Did you teach that they're going to live forever? Is that what you were saying?
That was not exactly what I was
like
saying.
Mind,
not exactly.
Mind lives forever.
Maybe
peaceful.
the mind lives forever. The body disappears, but the mind lives forever.
But
maybe that's what Venerable Sunyo was teaching.
One time I was in an airport, and a reporter came up to me and recognized my robes. And they said, oh, it's interesting, can we do an interview about interesting travelers for the newspaper? I said, sure. So we had a little talk about what kind of things I would miss if I would go back to Australia, because this happened in the Netherlands. I said, oh, in the monastery the chips is always cold, and I will miss the hot chips. Yeah, so I was talking about this reporter on a very basic level, because they don't want to know about the ultimate goal of Buddhism. I don't want to tell them about that. And so depending on where we are on the path, we reflect differently upon what is our goal in a way. But after the end of that conversation, the reporter asked, okay, you gave me all these answers about hot chips and living in a nice forest, but is there any goal to your practice? I said, yeah, but that shouldn't be in the newspaper. But then I reflected, in a way, the goal is to let go of all goals, to not have any goals, to not desire anything, to not become something, and not to be anything, to just don't have any goals. That's the goal in a way.
Yeah, I was
just expecting it will be happiness, but it seems like the peaceful is the highest happiness.
Yeah, but that happiness itself is not the goal. It comes from having no goals, having no desire. Yeah, and you don't have desire with a specific aim to be happy then, because then you're still desiring the happiness, and then it won't work. It's like an oxymoron in a way, but
you have to remember that when you reach to the end, and then it's like, okay, so what's the purpose of living anymore? Well, the purpose is serving others. You have a compassion for others, to pull as many people out of the suffering. So you become one of the teachers. You try to help others, if you can, teaching, for example. So that is really, they don't have any other goals anymore. They've done everything. The work is done. There's like, you got the results, so to speak. So you don't really have, besides that, there is no really other reason to live anymore. But, because you could commit suicide, for example. And there is, that's all over and done with for this kind of person who's ended the path, so to speak.
Yeah, but they also don't have a desire to not exist, right? They don't have a desire to exist, but they also don't have a desire to not exist. So it's all, in a way, it doesn't matter to them whether they exist or not. That's why.
No, but yeah. Anyways, okay.
That's why that equanimity comes in again that Eddie mentioned. Talking about Eddie.
Yeah, I have a question. Okay, yeah. Do you think Nibbana is attainable within this lifetime? This lifetime, you know. You say something, then I'll say.
Yeah, next 7 days, Eddie.
Huh?
Just put the effort in.
Say again.
Yeah, and the only thing is like, yeah, you just read the practice Satipatthana, and you'll get there.
Yeah, it's possible within this lifetime.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my
7 days.
answer. Yes,
what's
it
today?
is.
Saturday. Next Saturday, I'll come and see what happened. I mean, look, it's still a slow process. But when Ajahn Brahmali said in the beginning of the workshop, it's still, it's gradual, and then it happens.
It happens. Yeah, it's only you who knows it yourself. You know.
Yeah.
You can't describe to people.
Well, nobody's going to come and tell you. It's not going to be in West Australian. But look, you can still verify it with somebody sort of like, because you really know, even after deep meditation, you don't really know what the experience was, for example. So you can just sort of, teacher can help you how far you are in the path, perhaps.
Mm.
Any more last one before we end for this year?
Can I end with one last comment then, if there's no more questions?
There's probably online. We can talk.
Oh, online still.
Is there anything short and online? Or you want to say something quick?
No, go ahead.
Okay, because this answers Eddie's question as well, but it's also for all of you. Sometimes we get asked, can lay people get enlightened, right? Similar to what you asked, is enlightenment possible? And in a way, you can also ask, is stream entry possible for lay people? Or is it possible still in these days? Because once you attain stream entry, enlightenment or the end of suffering is inevitable, right? You cannot decide, oh, I'm going to stay in samsara forever after stream entry. So the question should really be, is stream entry possible? Yeah. And if I did not think that each one of you has the possibility to attain stream entry and eventually enlightenment, then I would not bother coming here. Then I would stay in my hut and meditate for myself. Yeah, so that's why I come here, and I think that's also the reason why other monks and nuns come here, because we have the faith in all of you that you can actually practice this gradual training and not get stuck at the beginning stages, but actually go until the very end. And it doesn't really matter, are you a monk or a nun or a lay person for that. The gradual training applies to all of us in different ways, but it does apply to all of us. And I do believe that each one of you, Eddie as well, enlightenment is possible.
Eddie as well.
Eddie as well, because he asked the question. And maybe not in 7 days, but maybe.
And look, it's you continue practicing as long as you have the faith. You continue practicing. If it's not this life, then next lifetimes. And if you in this lifetime, if you didn't made it whilst living your good life, when you die, there's also a good time to try to put the last ditch effort in there. Was there anything online? No. That's it. Okay.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Let's do some more enthusiastic sadhus for the Buddha's teachings and the gradual training. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Yeah, The end of suffering, may you all find it. And let's end
Very
with
good.
paying
Does
respect.
Leha want to say something before we pay respect?
Yeah, so I think all of us are very grateful to have the teachers and online people as well. They find that the workshops are very useful. So we're not sure when the next workshop will happen, so it's really up to the teachers what they want to do. But in the meantime, we know that for sure, Ajahn Mudito is coming back to teach us during Christmas. So if you have any withdrawal symptoms, please come back.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you, Ajahn
See you on Christmas.
Sunyo and Ajahn Mudito.
Thank you so much. Well, let's
all
pay
the other
respect to the
teachers.
Buddha Dhamma Sangha.